Good morning, y'all. Merry Christmas. Happy fourth day of Christmas. This is, let's see. I'm lost in the song. What happens there? There's geese. There's birds somewhere. Four calling birds. There it is. Yeah. All right. So, good morning. Good morning to everybody online. If you're joining us online, again, this is Pajama Sunday. And so, every Sunday can be Pajama Sunday if you truly believe in yourself. This morning we're going to cover Jesus' entire childhood. So you saw pretty much everything we know about Jesus other than him running off to Egypt from the time that he was born to the time that he's 30 years old. Except for, so we got this one story for you. So before we talk about Jesus, though, I want to talk about 5-year-old Alex because you need a story to go along with it. So, a lot of y'all know that I grew up as a choir director's kid. My mom was the choir director at Mount Pisgah in Alpharetta, or I guess it's Johns Creek now. It actually changed from Alpharetta to Roswell, back to Alpharetta to Johns Creek over the course of my life, without changing locations. Like it stayed in the same location. They kept changing the borders. I don't know how one town can annex another town. I get the Johns Creek part when they added a new town, but I don't know how Roswell took over for a little bit. But anyway, so they would have choir rehearsal on Wednesday nights, and they had childcare for choir rehearsal. There was a lot of people in the choir, especially at Christmas concert. She just did her Christmas concert. She's now at Alpharetta Methodist. Had like 120 people in the choir, so they have, choir. And so I'm in childcare as a little kid, and everyone filters out, everyone leaves, and I guess because I was a staff kid who was always there, the teacher just said, all right, well, no one else is here, why don't you go find your parents? So I just left the nursery, and I'm like 5 or 6, I'm not like a baby. And so I make my way to to the choir room, there's nobody in there, so I go up to the sanctuary, where sometimes they practice in there. There's nobody in there either except for the lights out and the pastor and his wife are cleaning up. And I'm just kind of like, do you know where my mom is? And he's like, no. And again, this is like 1991. And so kids, back in the 1900s, we didn't have these. So they had called my house, and my dad answers the phone, and they say, well, is your mom there? No. Okay. All right, well, Alex is here, and we don't know where she is, so we're going to drive him home. So they drove me home. When we get home, I get to hear the rest of the story. So what happened was, my mom went to go pick me up from the nursery, and the nursery worker said, his dad already came and got him. And so I said, okay. So she got in her car. She said, that's kind of weird. It doesn't make any sense why you would drive all the way over here. But okay. And so she just went home, and I got left at church. Come to find out that there was a second Alex, who had gone home with his dad at some point. And I'm pretty sure that nursery worker got fired. Anyway, so I got left at church, so it makes me just like Jesus. So let's hear the story from the Bible that you just watched on the screen. This is Luke 2:41 through 52. It says, each year his parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. When he was 12 years old, they went to Jerusalem according to their custom. After the festival was over, they were returning home, but the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't know it. Supposing that he was among their band of travelers, they journeyed on for a full day while looking for him among their family and friends. When they didn't find Jesus, they returned to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple. He was sitting among the teachers, listening to them and putting questions to them. Everyone who heard him was amazed by his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were shocked. His mother said, child, why have you treated us like this? Listen, your father and I have been worried. We've been looking for you. Jesus replied, why were you looking for me? Didn't you know that it was necessary for me to be in my father's house? But they didn't understand what he said to them. Jesus went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. His mother cherished every word in her heart. Jesus matured in wisdom and years, in favor with God and with people. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So like I said in the video, every year, most Jewish people, if they could make the trip, if they weren't sick, if it wasn't too far away, they would go to Jerusalem for Passover. It was their big festival. And so if they're traveling from Nazareth, it's a long way. I think it's like 80 miles from Nazareth to Jerusalem. They would travel in a caravan. So probably everybody in the family is going. Everybody in the town is all going together. All right? So that makes it a little easier to understand how they might lose him. Also, we know that Jesus has little brothers. We don't know how many siblings he's got. We know of at least two. The book of Jude, the book James. Those two, we know at least those two guys are Jesus' younger brothers. And so Jesus is the oldest brother. He's the Son of God. He's almost an adult by their standards. So they're not too worried about him. He knows what he's doing. He's done this 12 times before. And then all of a sudden they realize, I guess probably when they stopped for the night, that Jesus was missing. And so they had to go back and find him. And they probably traveled in a caravan to protect from robbers. So as a parent, this is interesting preaching this as a parent because I get both sides. I got left at church. But also, I've misplaced my child before. And so back in May, it was just me and Amelia and Della, and we went to Universal Studios. And Amelia, she wants me to call her Amelia, lost her wallet on Hagrid's ride somewhere. We think it's in the bottom of the lake. So if you find a Hello Kitty wallet at Universal, let me know. And it should have a Universal gift card in it, which probably is not still there. But anyway, so we lost the wallet. We go eat dinner, and I say, hey, let's walk back in the park just for a second, and we're going to go file a lost report. And so we walk in the gate, and I kid you not, the lost and found place is from here to Connor back there. That's how far we need to walk. And I said, we're going to go right there, and we're going to make this report. And so we walk from here to there, the three of us, and I'm standing in line, and right as I get to the front of the line, Della goes, I don't know where Amelia is. Somehow she got lost in a 50-foot walk, and she just kept on going and following the crowd from the entrance to the exit, and then got to the exit and was like, this doesn't seem right. And so it took us about 10 minutes of Della shouting Millie's name from a corner, us getting security guards involved, and finally someone was like, hey, we found a missing girl at the back gate. So just put things in perspective. I lost a child while trying to file a report for her lost wallet. So I'm not taking the blame for this one. Anyway, we got her back. But that was only like 10, 30 minutes. I don't remember how long it lasted. And that was a lot of panic. They looked for their kid for 3 days. And there was no security. There was no recordings. There was no cell phones, no way to locate this kid. So I imagine they were pretty freaked out. But then they find him in the temple. And I've spent my whole life, trying to become more and more like Jesus. But the fact that they find him in the temple after losing him makes it realize that when I was 5 years old, I was more like Jesus than I've ever been before, that I can relate to him better than ever. But he was 12 at the time, and so I thought we should at least give you a little picture of what Alex looked like at 12. So let's throw that one up there. This Alex is 12. I added this picture too just because I wanted you to see my flowing locks of hair when I was, I think, 18. This is right after I graduated high school. There's Audrey before we started dating, but she's already wearing my hat, so you can see where this is going to end up. So there it is. Just a little show and tell there. All right, back to the sermon. Jesus is impressing the teachers of the law. So he's in the temple with all of these pastors and scholars, and the way Jewish learning works is a lot of what we would call Socratic method, but asking questions. So they were impressed not just with his answers, but with the questions that he asked, which is important to think about. Asking good questions is just as important as giving good answers. And so they're impressed. And so it makes me feel a lot like Jesus because that pastor that took me home, he often pretended to be impressed with my ability to be a know-it-all. And so he's there in his father's house about his father's business, which kind of feels like a slap in the face to his real dad. Hey, it's your dad. I couldn't find you. Oh, I'm at my other dad's house. It feels, I don't know. What can we learn? First, parents, he smarts off at his mom. All right? He says, why would you be looking for me? Of course I'm right here, right where you left me 3 days ago, and I never bothered to look for you. Parents, even the Son of God as a teenager can make you pull your hair out. All right? So it's just the way the world works. We know that Jesus was sinless. So in his ridiculousness here, it wasn't even a sin. It was just because it says that he's going to grow up and continue to grow in wisdom. You can lack wisdom without being a sinner. Just throwing that out there. Because he was like, oh, yeah, maybe if my parents don't know where I am for 3 whole days, they might be worried. But, and he kind of smarts off to his mom, and we don't hear from him again for 18 years. So also, that's the last time we ever hear about Joseph. That's the last time his dad's there. All right, second, more to what we should talk about. How can we apply this to our lives? We should always be looking for Jesus. And we should expect him to be in unexpected places. This is not going to be the last time Mary loses her son at Passover for 3 days. Think about that. She will go to Passover again 21 years later and lose him again for 3 days because Jesus was crucified during the festival of Passover. And it won't be this last time somebody is confused about Jesus and he's going to go, well, didn't you know? Because at the end of the book of Luke, we have a story called the Walk to Emmaus, which is where 2 disciples are walking from Jerusalem back to Emmaus, and they're upset, and Jesus appears out of nowhere. It's a fascinating story. He just appears out of nowhere walking next to them, and they're not freaked out by that at all. They're just like, oh, and then they just start complaining to him about everything that's happened. They're like, oh, we thought he'd be the one. He said, like, didn't you know this is what he was supposed to do? And finally, after a long time, he reveals himself as Jesus, because we don't expect him in places. We don't expect the answers that he's going to give us. We can never just be like, well, this is exactly what Jesus is. This is exactly what Jesus wants. This is exactly where I can find Jesus. It's always a mystery. It's always sometimes confusing. It's something we have to work out. Even when it's dark and hopeless, Jesus will be found in the presence of God, wherever the Father is working. And of course, you'll see the brightest lights in the darkest places. And when you find him, you'll be amazed at what Jesus has been up to. Teaching teachers, caring for the poor, healing the sick, returning from the dead, offering hope that you didn't think was possible, and whatever it is that you're going through that you came in with this morning. And we never expect him to say what he says. We'll come to Jesus with our problems and say, Jesus, why did this happen? Or Jesus, I don't understand this situation. And a lot of times he just takes it and flips it on his head. It happens over and over again in the Gospels. People will ask him a straightforward question, and he'll give them a completely off-the-wall answer that points them in a direction they didn't even know they needed to walk in. We never expect him to say what he says. It reminds me of the Footprints poem or passage. Do y'all know what I'm talking about, the Footprints? I'll tell you if you don't remember. So if you go to a Christian bookstore, you will find a painting of this thing that says Footprints, and it'll say something to the effect of, Jesus and I were walking, there's 2 sets of footprints in the sand, and Jesus said, these is when we were walking together, and then person says, well, why, there was only 1 pair of footprints here, why did you abandon me? And Jesus says, no, those are my footprints when I carried you. And so that's a sweet poem about how we understand how God carries us through our hard times, but there's better versions of this. I also like the one where you say, hey, what's that long line in the sand? And that's Jesus said, well, that's where I dragged you. Or the weirdest, most off-the-wall one I saw was, what are all those thousands of footprints? Oh, that's when the cast of The Muppets Christmas Carol carried you. That one kept showing up in my feed in the last couple weeks. But anyway, we're looking for God. We don't know where he was. We don't know why things go the way they go. We don't know why we end up the places, or we think things are going to go a certain way and they go a different way. And we come to Jesus and we ask him, and he's going to give us an answer that we're not expecting. He may tell us a truth that we've always known, but we weren't willing to hear it. Or maybe he'll say, oh, no, we're going this direction. We come and find Jesus. Keep looking for Jesus and see what he leads you to. So we got 2 more days left. 2024, we're moving into 2025. Let 2025, practice saying the year for a while, and practice writing it on checks and stuff like that. 2025 is about looking for Jesus. Find him in unexpected places and rejoice when you find him. Follow him there. Let 2025 be about listening to Jesus hearing him say unexpected things. Come back to the words of God in prayer and in the Bible and in worship. Create space for Jesus in your life. We have so much chaos. We've got to sit back and reflect to say, what can I take out so I can find time for the most important things? Here at the Orchard, we always say we're all about worship plus 2. That if you call this place your home, we invite each one of you to do worship plus 2. Worship is show up to worship. So you guys did a great job. You're already batting 300. All right? But we also, plus 2 is we're called to serve and we're called to grow. Find somewhere to serve, whether that's in here, whether it's youth, children's ministry, taking up the offering, serving communion, or maybe it's finding somewhere to serve out there, whether it's working with a nonprofit or volunteering in the schools or just being there for somebody day in and day out who really needs help. So that's plus 1. Plus 2 is find somewhere to grow. We're called to grow. Grow on your own, grow together. Being a part of a grow group or some committed regular meeting accountability group is the best way to grow. God set it up like this. He said, you are not supposed to do this alone. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, said there is no gospel but social gospel. And he didn't mean any political things. He meant there is no loving your neighbor as yourself without being around your neighbor. And so we've got to do that. So find your worship plus 2. And I'll remind you of our CARES acronym. That each one of us, that at the Orchard, we believe our foundational values are CARES. That's community. We do community, whether it's easy or whether it's hard. We're action-oriented. We find ways to serve in the community. R stands for real. We bring our real problems to each other. We can pretend we've got it all together, but we can't grow like that. E is that we embrace everyone. We try to find a place for every single type of person that might come in here. And the S is we keep seeking Jesus. Find Jesus in 2025. So as we close in worship this morning, I invite y'all to open your heart in every area of your life to God. Think through all the different parts of your life and say, which parts do I not let God be a part of? Is it your relationships? Is it your work? You got to have a certain attitude at work. Is it the way you act with your friends? Is it the way you manage your money? What is it that you're just like, I'm not giving that to God? Because we even see as a 12-year-old, Jesus was the smartest man that ever lived. And that he wasn't even embracing all of his power. If we really believe that Jesus is king, that born is the king, we know that all the things that he thinks for how we should live our life are actually the best way for us to live our life. And so we could say, well, I don't really like his teaching on that. But if we say he's king, we'll say, okay, well, I'll give that a shot. I'll open that area of my life. And last, keep up with your kids. Don't lose them for 3 days in 2025. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for who you are. I pray that you would allow us to experience your grace and your power to change our lives. Lord, I pray that right now would be a once and for all moment where we can follow you for the rest of our lives and give every area of our lives. Lord, I pray that you would bring healing and peace and comfort and direction, even if it's a direction we're not expecting, that you would show us what the next step is, Lord. Lord, let us find you in unexpected places. In your name.